We've been talking a great deal about Usher. And one thing I will say about Usher is I feel like Usher is a serial monogamist, right? Usher is not afraid of commitment. He is on his third marriage. And shout out to him as someone who, came into the game early, right? He has always had an affinity for older women, although his current wife is 5 years younger than him, you know. But that has always been a thing for him. And so, as a sex symbol, coming off of his relationship with Chili, which it's been like 20 years since they broke up, which is crazy. And we're still talking about that relationship, although they did admit to keeping in contact and kind of seeing how things might have gone a few years back, but they kept that on the low. That relationship was relatively short in the grand scheme of things. He was with Tamika longer. They were married. Then he was married to Grace for a period of time. And now he has been with his current wife, Jen, for 5 years. And of course, they got married on Super Bowl Sunday. But as a sex symbol, coming off of Confessions and 8701 and the success of all of that, he got involved with Tamika, who was older. She was his stylist. People were alleging that she was not completely free of her marriage when they started dating. And, they had some issues with her at the time period. Look, Forensic Accountant has written a long message in the chat about Tamika Raymond and what he feels the problem was. So let's see what he said. He said, okay, Usher, what happened was Tamika and her friend, clearly under an alcohol haze, approached Wendy Williams in a club, vowing to expose Usher if she allowed them on the radio. This is a true story. I'm not sure if all the details are right, but Wendy did allude to this happening. Wendy invited her on, and suddenly Tamika had nothing to say and was promptly booted from the WBLS studios. Next thing, they were married. Of course, the fans revolted. Exactly what was Tamika intending to expose? How did she quickly go from disgruntled stylist to wife? I don't think that has anything to do with why the fans did not like Tamika. They might have thought she was a little scandalous or maybe things weren't on the up and up, but I fully believe they felt that Tamika did not look aesthetically what they felt like Usher Raymond should be with. Usher is attractive, fit, young, and here he was marrying this woman who was older, let's be honest, a brown skinned woman, right? Who had children from another relationship, might have been married. So I get that, but we pick and choose when we want to stand on our moral high ground at times as far as do we care how they got together. I fully believe Tamika received all of that heat because they felt like she wasn't attractive enough for him. The things that were said about her during that time period. And here's the thing, maybe she was a little mean to people. Maybe it was reactionary because people were being mean to her. Or maybe she just had a nasty attitude. I don't know. Tamika is a good friend of one of my friends, so I have met her on occasion and spent time with her. She's always been incredibly nice and cool to me. But you never know what happens in other situations with other people. So I'm not going to discount anyone's experience. But Forensic Accountant, what Wendy had 7 million listeners. They heard the interview that day. What I'm saying is we don't know. They heard the interview and Tamika not having anything to say, but we don't know. Tamika disputes what she said to Wendy in the club and that conversation. I'm not calling Wendy a liar. I'm just saying we don't know what was said, right? Regardless, even if she was like, I'm mad at him today and I'm going to go blast him, she didn't blast him. And whatever happened, they ended up married. I don't know if you're implying that, she finagled him into that marriage, but I do not believe that she did in that way. Dude was open, and that was where he wanted to be at that moment. Can't speak for later. At any rate, Usher's been doing a lot of press. And so, in a recent interview, he said that, you know, he and Tamika got married in 2007. And he said, I think I became very closed and then I felt attacked in many ways. It was a bit unconventional, excuse me, in a time when I felt like my female fans were judgmental of the woman that I chose. He said he still isn't sure what all the public scrutiny was over Tamika, who is 7 years older than him. But he said he has his speculations. And Usher put it on the table. He said she was a dark skinned woman, and maybe they didn't want to love her in a way because of maybe some reason that had to do with themselves. I don't know. Or maybe she was not the best reference because of how she handled herself. That's not for me to be concerned about. I did my part and I did what I thought was right. You know, during that time period, they had done an interview with Essence Magazine. I believe they might have even been on the cover. And so Usher just talked about in that interview about how the backlash really, did a number on their relationship. He said, ours is not a typical love story, but it is a true one. Tamika and I have been fortunate enough to go through the thick of it in the beginning. We've had the opportunity to huddle up as a team and to make sure we're clear and speak as one voice. They divorced 2 years later, but they had two children together. Their sons are 16 and 15 at this point. They had a difficult custody battle, but they're in a good place now, which I feel, good for them for. Forensic accountant is going in. He does not like that. Whoa. Yeah, he said that they heard the interview. He feels that Tamika finessed Usher. Finessed in what sort of way? Because people say this a lot. Usher was a grown man at that point, and not just an average green grown man. By the point he was dating and getting with Tamika, he had been in the industry for a decade. He had had a very public relationship with Chili. He had seen some things. It wasn't like, he had the 8701 album. He had dated before Tamika, and I think after Chili, in between there, a model named Alicia Brightwell. She used to date Exhibit. So, I mean, I don't believe this. People like to say and they want to think Usher was finessed like he was some helpless child. He absolutely was not. He wasn't. She didn't have to finesse him. Usher had an affinity for older women. I, I can share this because it doesn't matter at this point. Back in the, I guess, early 2000s, so this would have been maybe pre-Chili and then a little post-Chili, but there's a good friend of mine that Usher pursued relentlessly. He really was interested in her. She was not interested in him, partially because he was younger than her and, some other things. But he was not some naive kid. He wasn't unaware of things and how this goes. He absolutely understood that. Shout out to Urban Spinster. She dropped the name of the show that Tamika is on. It's called Bold and Bougie. Excuse me, I said Black and Bougie. Bold and Bougie. It did premiere tonight on WeTV, and it is produced by Carlos King, who we know is first established himself as one of the producers on The Real Housewives of Atlanta, has since gone on to produce several other reality shows, which are quite popular. And, we'll get to see where Tamika is currently as far as her life. Forensic accountant adds, because clearly he's passionate about this. Nabi, they saw her as a gutter cat who threatened to expose you to the biggest wag in the entire world of radio gossip. Tamika had information that was harmful to him and threatened to use it. She may have, but Usher still continued in the relationship. What I can say is, and you may be right about that, but sometimes people fight and they fuss. She threatened to do it, but she did not do it. And following that, he still married her, and that was of his own will. I believe that. I know that. So there is that. But beyond that, I mean, here's the thing. Even if all of that, the fans didn't know to what degree that information was. Really, beyond that, even if that was the case, he made his choice as far as who he selected as a wife. And there can't be so much ownership in fandom that you believe that you are entitled to select who is appropriate for this artist to date. That's ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't, I just don't believe the way the fans treated her was fair, because there are plenty of wives that have done more dirt or more things scandalous or whatever to their significant other, or even not just wives or just whatever. And they weren't treated with that amount of vitriol. And Usher said it, and you could think, if you think of the comments back at that time period, they were all about her looks, that she looked old, and things of that nature. They wanted to see Usher with another chili type, another Aisha at the time. Was it Alicia or Aisha? I can't remember. But and that's not what he gave them. And I've always respected him, one, for following through with his heart. I know that that had to make that relationship very, very hard because, I mean, as people, but I feel like as men in general too, it takes a mature man to ignore people saying, "Ooh, she's not the one," and capping on someone who you love their look. A lot of people would fold under that type of pressure, and maybe he did. Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying she was a perfect person. I'm not saying there was nothing wrong with her, that she didn't do some things. But at the same time, there are women that have done far worse, or there had been far more crazier situations. And the bulk of what was going on inside of their relationship wasn't really, really known. And again, most of that conversation, even if you feel like it was deserving because of her behavior, most of the darts and the critiques had nothing to do with that, and they were largely on her looks. So shout out to them. Forensic Accountant says, by the way, I'm not an Usher fan. I loved some Wendy back in the day and was a faithful listener. I heard the runner up to the interview and listening to the day of the interview. I'm not doubting you. I mean, I do remember that happened. I'm just saying that there's a lot of room for interpretation about the conversations that happened before they got on air or in the club. And whatever Tamika did when they came up there, Usher and Wendy weren't so tight that Usher was going to react in retaliation. I don't know. I do think that based off of her looks, she received a lot of unfair treatment. And, it's hard. It is why back in the day, male artists, well, both male and female, but male artists especially, were encouraged to keep their relationships in secret because it made them less desirable to their fans, and their fans start to get offended. And I think that Usher is the perfect classic example of that. And to me, the way that she was treated was wrong because it was just based on superficial things. And, we got to do better. And then, well, I won't say that, but I am happy that they worked through that part of the issue. So Tamika was at all Super Bowl, excuse me, and she said that that is one of the perks. As far as their relationship with each other, after going through that custody battle, he says they're not good, but they're good. You know what I'm saying? I think that's in reference to his song "Good Good." Um, but Tamika said it's a perk having him as her son's father and getting to go to the Super Bowl. She said that right now she's not dating anybody that can take her to the Super Bowl. That is in her trajectory of the type of men she would want to date. So, you know, being able to go and check out her ex, it's a perk.